All right, you guys, welcome into my channel. Excuse the little hat. Okay, it's a rough month. It's December. Okay, shout out to all the moms, dads, families. Y'all know what we going through this time of year. Okay. But anyway, y'all. So let's talk about shadow work. I've been doing so much shadow work. And shadow work is something that's ongoing, okay? I don't really feel like it's ever something that we're just like have arrived, you know what I mean? But I definitely feel like we definitely can get to a point where it's like, okay, wow, okay, I'm feeling more comfortable in this aspect or this aspect. So first and foremost, what is shadow work? Now, shadow work is getting in touch with the parts that you've repressed of yourself, okay? Getting in touch with the parts that you have repressed of yourself. So, we got the conscious mind. I'm about to break it down for y'all. All the way around the aspect. So we can just understand what am I saying, okay? So we have our conscious mind, and then we have our unconscious mind. Now, our conscious mind is obviously the mind that we use every day, that we operate with, and how we make most of our decisions. Most of the things that we say are coming from our conscious mind. Now, the unconscious mind is the mind that is who we really are. And the unconscious mind gets clouded and gets distorted and turned into dark things when it is forced to be repressed. Okay, so I'm about to break that down because I want it to really make sense. When it comes to the conscious mind is like the mask that we wear. So if you see like those pictures where they have a mask, but then they're really crying behind the mask, and the mask is smiling, but they're crying behind the mask. A lot of people think that like the unconscious mind is like the shadow. They think the shadow is like this negative aspect, and that is really what like Hollywood and movies and things like that try to portray the shadow, but the shadow is not negative. The shadow is only called the shadow because we can't see it. Literally, it's not negative, it's not evil, it's not demonic, it's not none of those things. The shadow is the shadow because we can't see it. Okay? And your shadow is your unconscious mind. Now, your conscious mind is the mask that we're putting on every day, or that we've put on that's plastered, and we don't even realize that it's plastered. A lot of the times, when it comes to the conscious mind and things that you think in your conscious mind, you don't even realize that these things are not who we really are, but only who we've become through the situations that we went through. And that's deep, okay? That's deep. That's deep. And when you take a chance, like when you take a minute, like say if you was to say like, oh, describe yourself, tell me about yourself. What do you like to do? Things like that. And you're like, oh, I don't know. Or, oh, I like to do this, or oh, I like to do that. Now, you could really like to do these things, or I'd be like, who are you as a person? You could really be those things that you describe yourself as. But a lot of times, the things that we tell people, describe yourself, things like that, we're telling them something that more than likely our brain is like, you telling them something that you feel like they will want to hear. And that's just facts. That's just facts. Like, you're telling them that it's something that they would want to hear, right? So, basically, how this conscious self comes about is when we have to repress our emotions. And that comes from trauma. Trauma causes you to repress, to not want to feel the feelings that you as a child may have felt, or that may have pushed you away from things that you liked as a child, but because this one told you, oh, that's ugly. Or even bullying, it's not only things that come from like your family and things like that. Like, people bullying you could cause you to repress certain things. Now you don't like things. You used to love something, now you hate it because of the backlash that you got for loving it. So you develop this mask about it. And it's like, when you're a child and developing these things, and we think this is who we are. No, this is far. We come from far of who we were. And that's why it's all about connecting to your inner child and tapping into that inner child energy, okay? When your parents, when you growing up and you're like, Mom, Dad, let me show you this. Like, you know how little kids are, like, you know how little kids are. They always want to show you something. They have such a beautiful spirit. They're just so happy, and they want to show you things. And like, oh, wait, let me just look at this. And you're like, I don't got time for that. That causes trauma. That's trauma. That child may feel like, wow, why does mommy not want to look at this? And then it causes you to maybe not like that thing anymore. Or maybe it causes you to feel anger. Or maybe it causes you to be silent. Or maybe it causes you to shut yourself out in your room and go to yourself, and you go inside and like you just think dark things or whatever. That is you repressing that. Okay? Now let's dig deep. Now, trauma does not have to be something that's like, oh, my parents, my dad used to beat up my mom. Yes, that is trauma, because then you will grow up thinking, you might think that it's something that is okay, like, oh, well, I don't want to argue in a relationship, so I'm going to be quiet and I'm going to be silent because I don't want to fight. I don't want it to turn into that. Consciously, you're thinking that. That's trauma. Or it could be even an instance of you was in school, you had a school play, or you was on a team or whatever, and your parents didn't come to the game, or whatever the case may be. They didn't come to the play, they didn't come to the show, and you really needed that reassurance. As a child, you needed them to be there for you. You needed somebody to cheer you on. You needed somebody to have your back, to support you, and they didn't. And then that just turns into repressed emotions of how did that really make you feel? And a lot of times we were forced to not deal with our emotions. Like, it's like, it is what it is. And then you're like, wow, like you grow up and you don't really find that thing special anymore. You don't find the same things that you used to enjoy special anymore, because nobody ever made you feel like they even cared or gave you the time to understand or reinforced that, wow, that's amazing. Wow, you did a good job. Wow, you're so beautiful. You're a king. You're a queen. Things like that. Like, what is it that was missing? The lack, you know what I mean? And especially like when you think about how a lot of us grew up and our parents might have worked all the time, or they didn't have a lot of time for our schedules, or like in my case, like maybe drinking was in the mix and things like that. And it's just like when you have to deal with certain things. Like I remember I had flashback to my childhood, and it was a moment where I wanted to show my dad this picture, and he was too drunk to even care. He was too drunk to even look. And it was like, that hurt my spirit. Like, for a child to want that, good job. Oh my God, it's so beautiful. You did such a good job. Like, for a child to want that and not get that, puts them, well, let me tell you guys where it put me, just so I can give an example of like, it put me in a place of like, oh, I don't need validation from anybody, or I don't want to show anybody else anything because it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. This is like, and well, that may be true. That doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. It still matters to be appreciated. It still matters to be reassured. It still matters to reinforce that affection, that love, that care. Somebody cares, right? Or say, for instance, in my case as well, I never really, my parents never really was super affectionate. Like, they might kiss every now and then, but like hugs and all, it wasn't that deep affection. And then we were from New York, so it's like, I never really got to see a lot of deep affection, a lot of love, a relationship that was built on love. I didn't really get to see much of that. It was almost like a partnership, you know what I mean? And it's like, you raised around this and you think like, okay, well, this is how it works. This is what people do. And and it caused me trauma in my relationships, because it's like, now I'm going into relationships diplomatic. I'm going into relationships aggressive because my mother was aggressive. I'm doing what I see because I'm like, oh, this is what works. Or I yell because when I was a kid, my mom used to yell and she used to get away, and my dad used to yell, and that's trauma. That's trauma. And then it's like, okay, well, I feel like, hey, I'm gonna throw a temper tantrum, and I know it's gonna work, because as kids we rationalize that as like, oh, well, this is what works. This is what get answers. This is what get results. I have to be aggressive because I need people to know that I'm not anybody to play with. Things like that, like, that is trauma. That is trauma. That is trauma. Whether you want to identify it or like acknowledge it, that's trauma. And basically what it causes is unsafe. You don't feel safe. When you can't come and share the things that you're happy about, when you can't come and show your parents and just ask for a hug, or ask for, oh, give me a hug, mommy, give me a kiss, or mommy, can I cook with you, or mommy, can I do this, or daddy, look at this, and daddy that. And I never felt that. Like with my parents, I never felt that I want a man like my dad. I want to be like my mom. Like, I never felt like that. And it's like, whether you like, and that's why I feel like I ventured off as the black sheep of the family or whatever. But for those who don't venture off and are like really stuck in those type of things, and those type of wavelengths, and those type of frequencies, because it's all you know, it's all you saw, and you don't even realize that you're doing it. Like, literally, you don't realize that you're doing it. I remember one of my relationships, like a lot of my relationships, I'm a super aggressive female. I've healed myself from that now, but it's like super aggressive, super, you know what I'm saying? Super partnership-ish, okay? This is a relationship, it's not a partnership. But I was never shown that love. I was never shown that type of relationship. So the dynamics of relationships was not much of love for me. It was much of, we get things done, we handle situations, we make it together, and we do what we gotta do for the kids, and we do what we gotta do, and we make it, and we are, you know? And it's just like, that's trauma. That is trauma, okay? And it puts you into an environment when you're in an environment where you're not being reinforced with affection, with love, with praise. And that's why, like, with my son, I try to uplift him every day. You're a king, you're amazing, you're so smart. Wow, you did this today, this is beautiful. You know what I'm saying? We have to be here for our kids and people around us, even in relationships. Because what we reinforcing is what's gonna set the tone. So if you're reinforcing, go sit down, I don't have time for that. What did I tell you? Do this, do that. Now it's not a safe environment. Now you don't feel safe. You don't feel like, oh, okay, well, like, it's not like, oh, it's not safe. And it puts you in that mode, and then your conscious self tells you, hey, I mean, I can't really step into like love situations without making sure it's like this, and I need to make sure that this and this and that, because you're looking for a partnership, or you're looking for whatever the case may be. It also can reflect in your life as every time you spoke up, like it was always something, or it was always a problem with your parents and things like that. And it's like that reflects into those people that's like, oh, well, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you like? Whatever, it's cool. What are you interested in doing though? What do you want? It's whatever, it's cool. I don't know. We can do whatever. That's trauma. Like people that really just not like, and I'm not saying like, oh, okay, you can't never know what you want to do. But it's like, even like people that like, say if they try to put you for a better example, you're at work and they're like, okay, well, who's going to be the leader of this group and this and that? And those people that's like, oh, I'm not going to do the leadership role. Trauma. That's trauma. That's trauma. And people don't even realize in small things, we are implementing trauma in those coping mechanisms. Those coping mechanisms is from the trauma. The ways we've learned to cope, the ways we've learned to deal with things, that is trauma. Okay? So this video is getting super, super long. So we're going to talk about, I feel like I'm going on and on about that part. So let's talk about, okay, well, how do I do my shadow work? How do I deal with this? How do I alleviate this? What you want to do is you want to really take yourself back. Even if you have to close your eyes, take yourself back to those moments. Think about those moments, even if it's in relationships, friendships. Take yourself back to those moments when you weren't allowed to feel those emotions. Your parents, go sit down, da 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 da. How did it make you feel? Did you want to cry in that moment? Did it hurt your feelings? Did you feel like you were worthless? Did you feel like it wasn't good enough? You feel like no one had time for you? Feel those emotions. Cry if you need to. When it comes to relationships, it's like you have to replay yourself in those situations